Is there any way within the Constitution that Trump would have the ability to undo the term limits so that he could just run again, or he could extend it?
The Constitution is not very relevant at this point. The question is just a matter of like, does he want to do it? If he wants to do it now and he's got the right people around him, he'll find a way to do it. The Constitution is it's just a safeguard that is there for people that care about the Constitution.
I don't know. Maybe we do it again in 28. Are you guys down for that? Trump 28? Come on, man.
But I mean, like Vance himself has advocated for betraying the Constitution, like he said it in plain English. So, yeah. And Donald Trump himself has tweeted out or social truthed out that sometimes you can suspend the Constitution if you need to. So the Constitution is not really a safeguard anymore. It's the people that are around him that would be the safeguards. And it seems like he's removing those people. So
Do you think if there's this like, I don't know what this Matt Gaetz, Laura Loomer H-1B schism is.
the vast majority of people fighting against H-1Bs, I think, are probably just people that feel like depressed workers who are having income opportunities threatened by people from overseas. I don't think the majority of them are racist or like Nazis or whatever, but I think a growing chunk of the conservative MAGA movement are Nazis and a decent chunk of them are just racists. And I think that the just racist and the Nazi people can work together and bring more people into their movement without the other people even being aware that that's what's happening because they're so kind of like lost on everything else. So we'll see what happens on that. It's very easy for them to be led astray by crazy people. I think it is really funny though that 10 years ago, who did the learn to code thing? The conservatives roasted the fuck out of Democrats for telling truck drivers to just learn to code.
Yeah.
And now the conservatives are like, actually, just teach us to code. We don't want Indians. Like, we will learn to code now. We changed our mind. We actually did. So it's, but yeah.
Yeah. If there are other felonies like the Matt Gaetz investigation, or my understanding is that RFK is being investigated, or maybe even like openly admitted to molesting a babysitter or anything, are all these positions open to be filled by people if they have like actual felony charges? I know that Trump can pardon them. I'm trying to understand like what would be the effect on Matt Gaetz's position if the FBI investigation finds him guilty of like,
I don't think there is an FBI investigation. I think that's just the subcommittee. That was just like a Senate or congressional like ethics investigation. That's not the same as like a DOJ investigation. The FBI is a part of the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. And so the head of the DOJ, the head of the Department of Justice, is the Attorney General, who will now be taking orders directly from Donald Trump. So if he doesn't want somebody investigated, then they won't be investigated. If they want to investigate somebody, even if that means fabricating things like they did with Hunter Biden, then they will investigate them. It just depends on what his feelings are. But there will be no federal investigations of Trump loyalists. Trump has already signaled that he will pardon you if you lie for him, like he did with Roger Stone, and he will kill investigations into you if he feels like there's no wrongdoing, like he tried to do with himself with firing Comey. And he's not going to investigate you if you're loyal to him, and he'll come after you if you're not, like he did with Hunter Biden. So yeah, all of this has like already been done. Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you think the next 4 years will be worse than his first term? Obviously, I'm asking you to predict, which is tough.
Yeah, my guess would be yes, but who the fuck knows? It could, like, anything could happen.
What could stop guard it other than like an assassination?
A civil war inside the Republican Party prevents them from moving in a strong direction on anything they want to do because they're so torn against themselves. And this H-1B visa bodes poorly for their unity going forward. I think a unified Republican Party under Donald Trump is really scary because it's probably the most significant threat to like the United States of America, or at least as it was envisioned by the people that found the country, would be like a Trump leadership that is like united in what they want to do. But who knows?
So the outcomes that you see as possible, worst case scenario is a unified party under Trump. Do you see it as a total erosion of the democracy? Is that like what
I think it already has been in a lot of ways. You have a convicted felon who has secured some powers from the Supreme Court that a president or no person in the United States has ever enjoyed before. I think it was a referendum on how we feel about fake news and misinformation, how we feel about leaders that don't take accountability or responsibility, how we feel about leaders that just lie to us. Like Trump kind of embodies the worst of everything that it could be. To like be an American, like he's like the worst of all of that, and our country basically co-signed it, like a braggadocious idiot that takes no accountability or responsibility for anything and is ultimately self-serving at the end of the day, which is what you would expect from, I guess, like a billionaire real estate guy from New York, and then did so with a guy who bought up like a media company, turned it private, leveraged it to help Trump win. A lot of weird foreign intervention. It's just like a lot of really bad stuff that all kind of like was, I think, validated in the last election cycle. Yeah.
Worst outcome. Civil war, decay of democracy. Could you see him finding a way around? Because I know Ben Shapiro's biggest pushback on you about Trump, I think when you guys talked, was you were like, yeah, but January 6th. And he was like, yeah, but he couldn't, It didn't
I mean,
happen.
he did.
He's got two.
It did happen.
He got 2 terms, and then he's
It's the
done.
first time, I think, maybe in 200 years that the certification was pushed back a day. It was. He failed in other ways, but I think that was largely just due to his cowardness and incompetence than anything else. But I mean, yeah, who knows? It's hard to say what'll happen.
Yeah. Because I know Ben Shapiro's biggest pushback is basically, yeah, but like basically the government will stand. Like there's enough stop guards that even if he does try to steal the government again, he can't.
Yeah, but now that he knows what failed him last time, now he's trying to work around that this time. There's a reason why he chose a vice president that explicitly said he would do what Pence didn't do. The reason why he's looking to staff the government with people who would explicitly allow him to do the things that they blocked him from doing last time. So that's kind of the concern, yeah.
Do you think that the military, because like the final question with that is if it evolves all in that direction, do you think that the military would take like civil force against people if they rose up and were like angry and rioting over and like potentially moving towards a war regarding the certification? Say he tries to push it back again and it's pushed back like 5 days, 10 days. People are probably going to start rioting, presumably, you would hope, you would assume.
I have no idea. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Who knows?
Do you think the military would go up against the civilians?
I have no idea.
Did Musk buy Twitter this year?
Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. Come here. Take over, Elon. Yes, take over. Hi, everyone.
Did he rebrand his hat to being black because he likes...
Because he's dark MAGA, is what he said. Dark MAGA or whatever.
He's so good. He's like actually the pastor's son who just didn't quite get bullied enough.
Name is Elon Musk.
This jump, though, is so cute.
American car
It's
company.
so bad.
And his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space.
Trump won the election, obviously. How did you feel about the election stream?
I thought it was, for the most part, fun. The last half of it.
Yes. Yo, Vadim, pull up Arizona, please.
Hey, Vadim, show me Georgia again. I just want to see it.
At what point did you know the election was over? Which swing state?
Well, I mean, like, it's easy to say this in
Hindsight?
retrospect, but the first signs of trouble were the very first reporting that Miami was 50-50. That was really bad.
What is Miami? Is it usually much more blue? Miami-Dade?
Miami-Dade is, yes, it's not supposed to be 50-50. That should not happen, yeah.
There's a huge Latino population, right? Which was like one of the biggest shifts, right?
I think so, yeah, in some states, yeah.
Older Latino males. Other news in 2024? I'm telling you, I don't have that much that's good. There was major layoffs in IT that continued. And yet, despite that, Trump is promising to protect H-1B jobs, which will probably not help with the tech layoff that's going on.
Based tech workers. They've had it too good for too long, and they need to reel that shit back. Comp sci workers are the most well-paid graduates in the United States. Their expectations for what an economy should look like are delusional, and they are due for some reality checks.
Goodbye, subscribers. I actually mostly just agree. I feel like most IT companies during like the Silicon Valley like bulge, there was a lot of hiring that probably wasn't necessary because there was so much extra cash. There's just like
they're making the growth that these companies are experiencing. Like the S&P 500 is led by so many of these tech companies. It's just absolutely insane. And then you got some tech companies that are like completely just disconnected from reality. Like Tesla is like totally disconnected from reality. NVIDIA, like if you would have said like 10 years ago, if you would have said 5 years ago, maybe. Remember NVIDIA, the company you buy graphics cards from, that's going to be like the company that was the highest market capitalization of any company in the entire world by far, which I think NVIDIA was, right? They beat, are they right now? I don't even know. Like, it's just like, it's
insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like, where did NVIDIA come out of? It was like out of nowhere. Do you think this comes back to the H-1B, which I feel like the blowout over the H-1B stuff has been super fun. Have we heard any response from Trump about Laura Loomer?
I don't know about Laura Loomer in particular.
She was close to him. She was like on the private jet. She was like one of the advisors.
Yeah, no, I think that once the bad press came out about her, he basically ditched her.
What was her bad press?
That she's fucking insane and she was hanging around Trump too much, and that Trump was maybe cheating on his wife again, or I don't know what him and his wife are doing, but yeah.
Gotcha.
The H-1B thing, though, represents, it's very funny, though, because this is like the neocon versus the MAGA type of econ stuff. Like under Bush, you always had like these Tea Partiers and small government people that didn't like the expansion of the Department of Education with No Child Left Behind. They didn't crack down on immigration enough. But like the reality is business owners and people who are invested in the economy in general like these things because it helps the economy grow. More government spending usually helps the economy. More immigration helps the economy. And H-1B is like a continuation of that. Conservatives saying that like, oh, we're kind of populist, but in reality, like we want to have our workers too, obviously. Yep. And Elon Musk and Trump are both billionaires who are invested in the economy and invested in workers coming over. So it's not surprising at all that they would fight the neocon position on that. But the MAGA people behind them are somehow surprised that billionaires are advocating for billionaire interests. So, but
I know the tech right and like the kind of like the Christian worker right that was fusing together. I was wondering what would be the thing that would separate them, because it's obvious that they're not going to stay together. Their interests are way too far apart. The benefits of a tech billionaire is not that benefits like a truck driver. They just have
probably yeah. But it also depends on how much like misinformation people get fed too. Like you might be able to convince these people otherwise that it is in their interest to believe in a particular thing. Like a lot of poor people still believe in trickle down economics, which is retarded. Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah. Recently, President Musk was backed by Trump. Have you seen like all of the coping from Trump and Musk about the President Musk stuff?
Yeah, I saw the clip of Trump saying that like, well, he can't be president because he's not American. And
no, he's not going to be president, that I can tell you. And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
I don't know. Who knows where that relationship will go? It's hard to say.
So curious to like watch. Do you think that they'll schism? Because I feel like Trump is not going to put up with, like, you can't have like two big narcissists.
I seriously doubt there's as much like division between Musk and Trump as people are implying there is. Although Trump's truth tweet about Musk coming back to Mar-a-Lago was incredibly fucking cringe.
So weird.
Don't know what that was about.
I thought that was fake. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is AI. There's no way this is real.
Or not real? Just like I thought it was just like somebody did like a Photoshop or like.
It's like an ex-girlfriend. It's like a girlfriend being like, please go home.
Yeah, it was really weird. But both of these guys have like incredibly fragile egos. So it's really, who knows? Like, yeah.
Do you think that the party is more aligned with Trump, though? Do you think that the voters are more aligned with Trump still than Musk? Like the loyalty is fundamentally Trump?
Absolutely. Trump was not supported because he supported Musk. Musk was supported because he's supporting Trump.
Yeah.
And all the Silicon Valley people's lines to Trump were through Musk, but like the people are still largely supportive of Trump. So if there was a big schism between Trump and Musk, the vast majority of them would support Trump, but a non-insignificant margin would leave because of Musk, I think. So that's weird. But like Musk is just seen basically as an aggregator for, or an augmenter for Trump, basically. He bought X to help Trump. He's doing these things to help Trump. He wants to build the economy for Trump. The loyalty's with Trump first, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the system better than me. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. I know the H-1B very well, and it's something that I frankly use, and I shouldn't be allowed to use. We shouldn't have it. Very, very bad for workers.
As we speak, we're finalizing H-1B regulations so that no American worker is replaced ever again. H-1B should be used for top, highly paid talent to create American jobs, not as inexpensive labor program to destroy American jobs.
Why'd you change your mind on H-1B?
I didn't change my mind. I've always felt we have to have the most competent people in our country. We need competent people. We need smart people coming into our country. And we need a lot of people coming in. We're going to have jobs like we've never had before.
But sir, you said you changed your...
Nobody knows the system better.
Interesting. I wonder why he's like willing to change his tune a little bit about being like, yeah, H-1Bs, I use them, but they're bad, to like, no, of course we're supporting them. Do you think it's because of Musk specifically? Like it feels like that shift that we see amongst these, almost a decade, it has to be Musk's influence and Vivek's.
It could be. Or it could just literally be he just wants to, I have no idea. Actually, I'm not even going to guess. I don't know. It might be Musk and Vivek. It's hard again because I don't know if Trump knows anything about the economy at all. I can never tell when he speaks if he has any idea what the he's talking about. So I have no idea.
You're still split on like whether he's like malicious or just stupid?
Well, no, I'm not split on that. I think he is stupid, but he might be a little bit less stupid when it comes to H-1Bs, but I have no clue.
Gotcha.
Like, I don't even know if Trump's businesses would even utilize H-1B visas that much. Like, if he's doing like commercial real estate and shit, if you're talking like construction workers and stuff, like, are these even H-1B, maybe H-2B jobs? Like, I have no idea. I really don't know.
Yeah. How do you feel about, since we're moving into global politics, how do you feel about Biden kind of like pushing through a bunch of extra aid and taking off a bunch of the limits on Ukraine? Do you think that under Trump that will like immediately change, or?
I mean, it's probably just things. Probably people rush to do some things at the ending of the presidency. I mean, I wish it would have been done earlier, but we don't really have the support in the U.S. for it. So I think Biden did a decent job with what he could. Maybe he could have pushed for more foreign policy-wise, but I mean, who knows? But yeah, we don't have like a coherent, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Like, we're so divided at home about what America even is or means that it's hard to present like a unified front when it comes to supporting allies across the world. It's hard to say, yeah.
How do you predict the dynamic between Putin and Trump to look? Because before, it felt like in 2016, if I remember, Trump was a pretty big Putin friend. He liked Putin. He was like, we got the best relationship. He's a swell guy. He was definitely working on like improving relations with Russia. Whereas it feels like what Russia's doing right now is like diametrically opposed to anything that America can be for. Do you think that he's going to try to smooth over the relationship with Putin?
I have no idea. That could go any direction. It could be that like Putin sees like an opportunity to end the war in Ukraine and goes to Trump and is like, listen, let's do peace. Give me some territory from Ukraine and we'll call it even Stevens. And now Trump is really good because now he solved the war and Putin gets what he wants and Trump gets what he wants and Ukraine is kind of forced to accept the concession because they're probably not going to win because they're not going to get the support they need. Or it could be that Donald Trump gets really irritated that Putin is not accepting a deal that he thinks favorable, and who knows what ramping up support from the U.S. side would look like. It literally is impossible to predict Trump on like
anything.
Anything.
Is he less predictable than any politician, basically? Broadband or
less predictable? I don't know. The problem is I just don't think he has a lot of knowledge of these things, so it's hard to.
Well,
like if I were to say that like I'm having issues with like the studio computer and I give you like 5 options for how to like reformat the disk, I have no idea what you would pick or why you would pick them. Same thing with Donald Trump. I have no clue if given like some outcomes for Ukraine, I have no idea why he would pick them or what he would say. Or if you were to ask me like a good training modality or therapy modality for a patient, I would probably pick the most complicated. Like I don't know. I don't know how he would make any of the decisions. I truly don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Do you think we can rebuild the Chank arc? What's going on?
I don't know. I think that the political paradigm broke down a few years ago when it became establishment versus anti-establishment.
Yeah.
There was a political commentator very prescient on this. His name was Stephen Bunnell in New York City in a Minds event where I made fun of the fact that you guys think that you're a politically diverse group of people. And I don't know if I asked them to raise their hands or if they did. It was like, who here is like left and right? And like everybody raised their hand. And I'm like, cool. How many people here support like the establishment? And it was like nobody versus anti-establishment. It was like everybody. It's like, okay, there's not a lot of political diversity here. There's just everybody here is anti-establishment. And I think Cenk is a little bit in that direction. He's just very anti-establishment. And then so that's just, for some reason, conservatives get to live, like they get to have all the pros of one world and all of the, like none of the cons of that world. It'd be like saying I have a body count of like 500 women and I've raped every single one, but I'm not a rapist. Like that's like conservative approach to politics, is that somehow Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, real estate mogul from New York, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, who's supported by the richest man, this guy is anti-establishment, who also was the president for 4 years, is somehow not the establishment, is supported by the entire Republican Party, is not the establishment. So I don't know how what?
Gonna join the Stromp isn't like owned by billionaires.
Yeah, I don't understand how Republicans can be anti-establishment and support Trump, but that's that they are right now. So that's the arc that like Cenk is on. And then I think Anna, there's a lot of people whose whole lives are. It used to be you think that like people's lives are defined by their trauma with their parents. Well, for political commentators, it's like that, except it's trauma with whoever made fun of you on Twitter last. And for Anna, man, those lefties really got to her. That homeless guy and the trans calling her a birthing person. Whew.
I feel like the lefty hatred, though, maybe this isn't your experience because I feel like you get uniquely horrible conservative hatred. But I feel like lefty hatred is like a unique level of like unpleasant to experience. Like it's like they don't just try to like punch you in the face. They try to like stab you and poison you to death and like kill all of your friends and family slowly and like monotonously, which I think can be like in some ways more distressing, especially when you assumed we were in the same camp than like the opposite camp trying to destroy you.
I think there's two things at play there. I think one thing at play is that if you are part of a political side, then it feels worse when they attack you. Like if a conservative wants to call me like a gay wad or whatever insult you want to use, like yeah, like okay, I don't care. But like when a lefty is like you're bigoted or you're racist, it's like, well, I don't view myself that way. Like the closer you are to them, the more the insults hurt because they're genuinely saying that you're not a thing that you view yourself as, rather than a conservative who's attacking you on a point that like, yeah, I'm not that. You, we fight on that. I think that it hurts more. And then a second thing is, I think that there's a slightly bigger buy-in, I think, for the left, like the things that you have to be in alignment on. I don't even know if that's true, though.
I think that's definitely true. One of the criticisms I feel like I have of, maybe not you, I don't, because I haven't asked you personally about it, but I feel like when I listen to a lot of Democrats and left-leaning people talking about Republicans since the election, especially, but this year, it feels like we all forgot about 2016. Like it feels like we all forgot like the absolute crazy shit that the left was doing from like 2016 to 2020, which obviously, I would hope that you don't, because you were like, in many ways, a victim of all that stuff as well. But I feel like when we look at Trump, it's hard not to look at that and think that he's a monster that we made a little bit.
Yeah, we did, but that's fine if you want to think that, and I think there's some legitimacy to that. But people just need to be aware that like all of politics is reactionary to everything else, right?
Yeah,
like people were like that because for a long time. I remember when the Weinstein stuff started to come out, and I remember I was in Omaha. I was outside of a dental office going into an appointment, and I was listening to 1110 KFAB radio host who, with Chet David, I don't remember the guy's name, but she was, or no, it might have even been Tom Becca back then. She was talking about how she heard the Weinstein stuff, and she's like, those girls knew what they were doing. They knew that they were trying to get jobs. It's like, damn, that's wild. So it's not surprising to me that there might be like an overreaction to women who are like, this guy that had a bad date with me, he raped me, which is a ridiculous point. But like 10 years earlier, it's like raped his wife. That's not even possible. That's right. Like keying your own car. Who would ever do that? Like it's just stupid. So I understand like, yeah, is Trump largely or somewhat of a response to some things? Sure. But I mean like the left is a response to things that the crazy right were doing. It's not like we got gay marriage because every state said, okay, that came from the Supreme Court. Same thing with abortion. Like, yeah.
I guess one thing that I think about a lot, do you think that the left tends to be broadly like more educated and if not morally right, at least like morally lucky, or do you disagree with that framework?
It's probably a lot of more luck, but right now they just tend to, for whatever reason, the political alignment ended up to where they probably believe more in things that are truthful than conservatives who are in complete and total fantasy land right now. But.
Yeah. And so this is something me and Josiah have like fought about before, which is that like, do you have different standards for like the educated versus the uneducated, or like the morally lucky versus the unmorally lucky? And I think like, I'm of two. I actually don't know where I fall. I waffle back and forth on this answer all the time. Because I think that there's sound arguments on either side, which would argue like, well, if this group is broadly more educated and whatnot, then there is a certain level of responsibility to conduct themselves. But then on the flip side, it's like, if you hold them to a higher standard forever, then you get this situation where you've got like actual cry bullies on the right about a whole bunch of shit, but they're like laughing at the Nancy Pelosi stuff and like all, like the standards become way too far because of this like, I don't know, slippery slope. I don't know how to mitigate between these two things, I suppose.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird question about like determinism, where it's like you can understand why somebody acts the way that they do, but you can only make excuses so long for it. I think interpersonally, this is very easy to work out. If you have a child or like a spouse, usually there's some type of vow involved. And, even if they're going through tough times or they're being kind of crazy, you're supposed to support them. If it's a partner, like, I don't know, for the type of counseling you did or for advice you give to people, if there's somebody like, I've been dating a guy for 3 months, I just found out he's got like, major depressive disorder and he's been cutting himself and he's threatening to kill himself. Generally, the advice is like, this is way above your pay grade. You don't have an obligation. The person might be like 19 years old. Like, this is not on you to figure this out. Even if you left and this person killed themselves, this is not like your fault unless you like told them to do it or something. The issue is like, we have like half the country right now is suicidal. And I can understand why people have gotten to that place, but it's really hard to do that analysis and to take, because all of the analysis basically involves you taking all of the agency from these people.
Yes. No, it is. It's treating them like
weird.
They're dumb people. Yeah, completely. They're like wounded animals, essentially, which like.
But they get that. They're allowed to do that. But the frustrating thing is that they treat themselves that way, because they'll tell you that like, I can't trust anything from the Health and Human Services Department in the United States because Fauci lied one time. And it's like, that's your standard? Like, have your parents ever lied to you ever? Like, you would never apply that standard to the other side, but they willingly do the double standard, but they have reasons for doing the double standard. So it's just hard to.
Yeah. But then it's tricky on the flip side, because then you'll talk with like, especially like diehard Dems, where they'll be like, well, Fauci never lied. And then you're like, well, he there was a number of, the problem is that this is the way science goes, is that he'll say something and it'll end up being incorrect because it's a brand new like field of study. Like that's standard. But instead of like explaining that, they'll just be like, no, that never happened, which I feel like increasingly, like the fact that there's increasing seeding distrust in institutions at like such a large scale suggests that there's something that's going wrong, and the culpability can't just be on like the dumb people not getting it. The culpability is also on them, but I'm dissatisfied with the answer that it's mostly them. It's like there's something institutionally going wrong here.
I understand what you're saying there, but I would say that the difference here is like 99-1. I think that over and over again, Democrats, it's demanded that they concede positions or change their view on things, and they do. And we can go through any number of topics, and they have. So
policy.
I mean, even statements like most Democrats had to admit, Biden and Kamala had to say when they were running for office, like the rioting is bad. It has to stop. Like we don't support this. This isn't good. The whole world has kind of changed course a bit on a lot of the trans stuff. The organizations, scientific organizations and academia, Olympic and sports institutions, like people have changed on this. Like they did it. They had their processes, both internal and external. I'm sure scientifically they're reviewing things, externally they're getting pressure, but they've changed it. But what have Republicans done that on? Please save me. Tell me one thing that Republicans have changed their mind on that was wrong in the past 25 years.
Iraq, the invasion.
Yeah, but I don't think I would.
I don't know if I don't
think I would give it credit. Yeah, I don't think that, because that was like everybody changed their mind on that, and Republicans pushed it first. I don't know if you get credit for that 10 years after. You get credit for acting in the moment and for being preventative. You don't get credit for calling something out afterwards and then disavowing all of that, but still essentially going down the same road.
Gotcha. So you'd say Iraq is different because it was like 10 years later when everyone looked at it and they're like, okay, this was obvious.
Yeah, Iraq wasn't like the Democrats saying to the Republicans, you guys messed up. Iraq was like the whole U.S. was like, oof, we fucked up, like everybody did. I think Hillary was giving speeches about the need for, because she was a senator from New York back then, wasn't she, I think? And she was talking about the need for, I think, the emergency use of force, or the authorization for use of military force, I think. Don't quote me on that. But like, I think that like we were relatively together on that, relatively speaking, and we all kind of realized it was a mistake, but that wasn't like Republicans admitting that they were wrong. They also do this thing too, where when Republicans are going to admit a wrong, have you heard of the no true Scotsman fallacy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they eject that person from the party. So it was never them that were wrong.
Not a good Republican.
Yeah, every single person that I support is correct. I was like, what about that guy who was wrong? Oh, well, I never actually supported him. Boom. And then they do that for everything. That's why when I've asked multiple times on peers in my Jubilee thing, and I was like, what's one thing you disagree with Trump on, or one thing you think he did wrong? They will proudly say nothing. They'll admit to nothing. But I think if I were to ask like Democrats, like, what are things that you think Kamala or Biden or Obama? I mean, fuck, a lot of them just don't even like Obama because they didn't go far. Like, it's not the same. Yeah.
Is it new under Trump? Because I haven't really been super invested in American politics until like the last 4 years, I would say. So I'm not as familiar with like Bush or like any of the other previous Republican. Was it similar? Like with Bush, were they as unwilling to kind of bite any bullet about Bush or anything like that? Particularly while he was still active as a politician.
I think it was similar. I think that there's always been that political partisanship. I think it's been pretty hardcore. As a Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage, Glenn Beck listener, proudly, they were always pretty unhinged about Obama and Bush. But I think the difference is that like to be like really politically active back then, Obama drew in a lot of new people. But like other than that, like politics is just like for politics nerds. But like now politics is for everybody, every single person. If you've ever bought a Bitcoin before, you have strong feelings about politics. If you go to the gym, you have strong feelings about politics. If you're on the internet playing video games or watching movies or doing anything, you're like part of a political camp now. It's like international.
But that's in part because the politicians are trying to do that. Like that's not like, I guess I don't see that as necessarily like an inherently bad thing. It just feels like the like avant-garde thing. Like it's just like the trend right now. I wouldn't be surprised if in the 60s people probably felt similar, that like everything was political. Everyone was always talking about politics because in the 60s politics was a really, really big deal. But then people got kind of sick of it and it died out for a bit. Maybe this is just like a cyclical resurgence of that same thing.
I think
obviously different.
Well, I think that the thing about politics back then, though, was like the Vietnam War was a huge thing. And there were like new things about, because I think the Vietnam War was called like the TV war, although even that wasn't compared to what we saw for Iraq. But like there was a lot of stuff that was on TV that people were seeing for the first time that was sensational. But now the issue is like politicians might be doing it a bit, but it's more social media has just connected us so much in ways that we were never connected before. And now there's like these worldwide groups that don't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense that you would be politically aligned with all these different groups, and it's causing a lot of dumb opinions to pop up. Like there are increasing like more friends I have in Europe that I talk to. There was this person like 2 weeks ago who was telling me that her mom is like a full on like is always going through like, have you seen this like trans stuff? And she's like showing her like social media from Switzerland, and she's showing her like American social media and shit. And I'm hearing this from more Europeans that like their parents are being radicalized by like American social media shit. And now you see Elon is giving strong opinions about like fucking who was the leader he was supporting? It was the AfD in Germany for a while. It was people in like South America, but like, yeah, like why is Elon even having an opinion on this? It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the first time that my dad specifically has had like strong opinions about Trump specifically. Like Canadians are always kind of tuned into American politics because it impacts us so much, but most Canadians don't care about the presidents themselves. Like they wouldn't be partisan towards a specific individual. But increasingly in Canada, I'm seeing like Canadians for Trump, which is just it's a very odd phenomenon that I haven't ever seen before. Like Canadians have never been for any American president. They've been broadly like left or right leaning, but that was about it. Which is
but people are like seeing these anti-establishment figures in like every movement. So like Brexit and Trump are like the same, and the AfD and Trump are like the same. And in Canada, the what's the name of that? Is it the PC? What the fuck is the name of that?
PCC?
Yeah, it's like that's like Trump, and like it's just everybody's like getting all thrown into like the same camp of like international political sides, and it's just super cringe.
Do you believe in the wisdom of crowds at all? Are you familiar with the concept?
Yeah, and but I don't know. The wisdom of crowds just means that if you ask a crowd about it, like a certain thing, their idea tends to converge on what the right answer is.
So long as they can be independent. Like if you average the opinion of the crowd, you tend to come to a closer answer than an expert. Or something like.
But these are like for very these are like for simplistic prediction markets. These aren't for like very complex and multifaceted, multivariate predictions about the future, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess when I think about like the increasing anti-institutional like feelings, I guess there's something in there where I go, is there something like true in there that maybe is being overlooked? But this is probably also part of my bad. I feel like I'm increasingly becoming, I wouldn't say increasingly becoming anti-institutional, but I feel like after working with Democrats this year and then the election specifically, the outcome, I didn't expect it to be as much of a win for Trump as it was. I was expecting it to be close. I didn't know who was going to win, but I wasn't expecting it to be such a significant win for Trump specifically, which made me go like, oh shit, like I'm disconnected because this isn't even this isn't even on the landscape of what I predicted, which means that like the systems I'm using to gauge where people are at policy and publicly are off because my prediction was so incorrect.
Sure, but it's hard to know like at the end of the day, like, what do you, like, people don't even know at the end of the day, like, what are we even predicting? Because, like, people will falsely assume that we're predicting what the public sentiment is. That's not true. They'll falsely assume what, like, a voter thinks. That's not true. They'll falsely, like, what you're really trying to assume is what are people that are willing to go and vote on prediction day or on voting day are going to go and vote for. Like, it's a much more like granular answer than people even realize. Like it might be that the majority of the country would support Kamala Harris. It might be that the majority of voters even would support Kamala Harris. It might be that the people that voted that day or that had the desire to vote, I don't know if there's like ways to measure that. Like it's difficult to figure it out. But I mean like again, like conservatives, like to push that it was like a blowout, but like it wasn't. It was like 2.5 million votes for a popular vote win. It wasn't the 15 million that they initially tried to say. And it was about 200,000 votes between all 7 swing states that could have made them go in another direction, it's a nice public vote win or a popular vote win, which Republicans aren't usually enjoying.
Yeah.
That is true. But I mean, like, there are also like global factors at play too. A lot of inflation sentiment that irritated a lot of people.
Sure.
And all the same like feelings that you have right now are the same feelings that Republicans had in 2020 when Trump lost. And they're like, there's no way, this is impossible. That's why they, to this day, say that it was voter fraud, and they still won't acknowledge that loss. So
yeah, I don't want to be that. I don't want to like engage in that brain worming, right?
Sure. If you came into that election thinking that like there's a 99% chance that Kamala wins, then something needs to adjust or whatever. Yeah. But
yeah, which it wasn't. But I would have put Trump winning popular vote less than probably 5%. I think honestly, looking back, I would have put it less than 5% pretty confidently, which makes me go, something was wrong in my thinking. There was just a thinking error there because I should have at least scaled up statistically the probability of that outcome. Obviously.
Yeah, maybe. There's just a lot of factors in here that we don't even think about. Like nobody thinks to look at the polling in Florida or Texas in terms of like likely outcome of popular vote, because it doesn't matter in the United States. The electoral vote is the only thing that matters.
Yeah, it just makes me go, if there's this anti-institutional wave that is like growing and growing and growing, is there something in there, even though everything that they're saying that it is stupid and wrong, right? Because I think so much about like the banality of evil. Like in many ways, the anti-institutional movement, I think, is like one of the bigger threats that we have to like a democratic system, which I think would be bad. I don't think we have a better system right now for basically improving human flourishing and well-being. I don't want to see democracy go. And so what's going on, that institutions are increasingly like disconnected from people in a way that makes them highly averse to those institutions. And some of it's like propaganda, right? There's a number of factors going into it. But the only thing I guess that I care about is like what the institutions themselves can do. Like what can we, proverbially we, like not actually we, because I'm not part of it anymore, but what can the institutions do? Because so often the thing that will be the cure to these major problems is super banal, right? It's super simple, right? One of the best things that like thrust forward like women's rights was like the invention of like the tampon, because it allowed them to be out and working and consistently available all the time because they could manage their menstrual flow. Or the birth control pill was another massively freeing thing for women's emancipation, even though it seems very banal in a lot of ways. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the issue, though, I've said this for a couple of years now, is that like all the simple problems have been fixed and everything that's remaining is pretty complicated. So there's probably not an easy, simple fix for stuff like that. Or maybe, I guess, I don't know, Ozempic is kind of an easy fix for fatness. Maybe we'll see. But it's pretty hard.
We never thought we could fix it before, but...
Well, no, there were people that... Scott Alexander actually wrote an article a few years ago saying that we'd probably fix it through pharmaceuticals, which is funny because it seems like that maybe is happening, although we still don't know if that'll happen for sure. One of the biggest things that I say is that like people are disconnected from experiencing the consequences of their decisions. And when you have that disconnect, training is impossible. This is true for children, it's true for animals, it's true for people. So if you vote for a thing and they do a bad thing, it's hard for you to even know if it's a bad thing because there are so many layers removed between that particular thing and the results that you experience. So it could be that we need to find a way to tie those together closer, but that's like such a sociopathic, unhinged thing to even suggest. Like if your state votes against FEMA or whatever, then fine, you just shouldn't get any FEMA. And that means that if you have a natural disaster, then you just sit and figure it out and you get no federal help at all. And that's really hard for people to, nobody would be in favor of that. But yeah, as long as those consequences remain super disconnected, it's very easy to be the guy on your team that ints every single game, but blames your jungler because who knows, like there's not like a one-to-one connection between your actions and why a game is lost. Yeah. And that's basically where we're at right now. Yeah.
Do you think that there is, because like what you're suggesting there, like a tying of consequences together closer is kind of more brutalistic, right? Because the big consequences for things that a lot of these like institutions safeguard against us is pretty massive. It's usually like human suffering and death. Do you think that there's a need for, like, do you think that there is something lost in a liberal democracy when there isn't a certain level of like brutalism that's counterintuitive? For example, people not realizing the consequences of their actions because harsh realities never face them because there's always a net.
I mean, maybe. I mean, it could just be that there's just like, we're just in an unlucky moment in time where the things that are like, life is pretty good in America, which means we don't have any crazy things to focus on. So everybody's like looking for a thing to focus on. And then there are some unique issues, like there's a lot of foreign interference right now in the United States. And it's very hard for people to see or want to acknowledge that. The technologies that exist now are ones that we're having a hard time dealing with. Social media is like, finally, the ship is being righted on that in some areas. I think Australia just banned social media access for people under the age of 16.
Are you for that?
Yeah, probably, yeah. So we're kind of getting there, but like the problem is that very rarely, it's kind of like dealing with an abusive person and you're like, why were you with this guy? Well, because abusive people usually have at least some really good traits. It's very rare that it's all bad. And so for any of these issues that need to be fixed, for an issue that I'm saying it needs to be fixed, the other side views it as like integral to their function and flourish in a democracy. It's important that Elon bought this and that conservatives are finally given a voice where the liberals can't silence them, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay.